my fellow coglings, it's Augustine, here to give you my first ever redesign video, you silly billies. Why did I say that? And today, we are redesigning Andy from Knights of Guinevere. Well, sort of. Hear me out for a second. So, I already really love all of the designs from Knights of Guinevere, Andy's especially. I was never cold on the junior engineer, but I gotta say, I've been really warming up to her lately. She's surpassed Frankie as my second favorite character. Sorry, no one can match up to Gwen. And all of this is to basically say it's really hard for me to change something I already think is approximating perfect. So I went for a bit of a different approach just this once. My goal with this was basically to change up the vibe of Andy's design while still cutting it close to the original. And, well, you'll see how I ended up feeling towards that in the end. One of the many things I love about Knights of Guinevere is its overall design. The highly clean and sleek Art Nouveau futurism of the park absolutely buzzes in my brain, and the way it contrasts with the gritty industrial feel of the surface also really buzzes in my brain. But since we're talking about tweaking Knights of Guinevere's design to my personal sensibilities, if I were to design the world of Knights of Guinevere, one thing I would do is emphasize and play up the more industrial aspects of the surface. Make it an even shittier shithole in comparison to the park. And that's pretty much the mindset I had going into the redesign. I wanted to downplay the more sciencey, lab rat, nerd emoji aspect of Andy's design and play up the more blue-collar engineer aspects of her design. One of the first things you'll notice going into this is the hair! In the show, Andy has her hair tied up in this fucked up short little ponytail, and I love it, it's iconic. But what I thought would be even more iconic is if she had her hair down in this messy, I just got up and couldn't be bothered type style. I also made it slightly longer than what her canonical hair length is supposed to be, just so we can have more volume to work with. Andy does not strike me as the type to have the time or energy to really take care of herself or her image all that much. She probably does the bare minimum, like showering so that she's not covered in the blue fumes all the time, and the occasional shave. But as far as stuff like hair care goes, yeah, I don't think that's happening. I'm mostly drawing from personal experience here. I like to think I'm a pretty clean person, even when the going gets tough. I can't imagine ever willingly skipping a shower. So I know maintaining proper hygiene can be very tough for some people, especially for people with low-functioning depression, or people who just don't have the time or means. I can't say the same for my hair care though. I have let my hair get pretty damaged in the past because of stress and exhaustion, and while my hair is in a much better state now, thank God, experiences like that still have a lasting impression on me. The antenna stays though. I very much like the antenna. I want to poke it. It's her little exposed nerve ending. And yeah, I know this piece of visual characterization is kind of at the cost of world building a bit, since theoretically these engineers probably wouldn't be enthused to have their hair just hanging out like that in a chemically and mechanically sensitive workspace. But in my post hoc justification redesigned Knights of Guinevere AU thing, am I really conceptualizing an AU out of this? Well, I guess I am. I chopped myself into it. I personally would like to think that the park engineers don't exactly have the best workplace culture. With all the stress and time crunching, I imagine the bar for safety standards have gone through the floor, essentially. With all of them too stressed out and focused on just meeting their deadlines and keeping their jobs, I doubt any of them would even care anymore about seemingly innocuous stuff like that. It also does sound like the exact type of workplace culture Park Planet wouldn't care enough to fix or maybe even actively encourage, all for the sake of productivity. So there, I turned my silly lore-breaking design quirk into a genuine piece of visual world building in my post-hoc scripting phase. Never let me cook again, by the way. Furthermore, I definitely want to keep Andy's aging lines, and I think later on in the redesign I actually accentuate them. Andy looks like she's somewhere in her mid-20s, but at the same time, she looks like someone who has aged way too much for someone who's in their mid-20s. And yet, despite the fact that she's purposely designed as someone who isn't supposed to be conventionally attractive, Andy is still a very pretty person in my opinion. I don't know, maybe it's just I'm gay, or just a romantic in general, but even just looking at some of her screenshots makes my heart hurt a little bit, and in a good way. And I hope I captured more of that somber beauty with my rework of her. It's kind of like finding a gemstone in the wild. It's clearly been roughed up and eroded by its environment, but it's still a gemstone. It's still pretty. I'm also giving her these fuck-ass goggles. In the show, she wears these really cool kind of hippie alternative glasses, And according to Dana Terrace, this is because Andi herself is really into alternative style clothing. I think that's cool, but I also just really think the goggles look cool too. I also want it to either partially or entirely obscure her eyes when she wears it. You might also notice I'm patting out her lab coat attire thingy in this too. Like I said, I'm mostly doing this to make her look more like an engineer than a scientist. I want to beef up this attire a bit. Make it look like it's made out of thicker material than in the original. Maybe this version of Andi has a reverse sleeper build? When she's in the uniform, she looks a little built, but when it's off, she's still the string bean she's always been. Maybe it's the same for all the lab rats? I'm also changing the flaps on it, again to de-emphasize the more rounded aspects of her uniform. Her sleeves can also be longer, and she can be wearing actual short rubber gloves instead of the really long latex ones she wears. Actually, I'm not sure if they're latex or if they're just straight up cloth. On second thought, yeah, I think they're just straight up cloth, which I think rubber gloves would probably be a better choice for handling android parts, biomechanical as they are. I'm also adding a bit more baggage to the pants she wears. In her OG design, she pretty much wears leggings underneath her boots. They're pretty skin tight as far as I'm aware. I want to make them a bit baggier, made out of a bit more heavy material. This is also kind of how I draw her normally too, I'm realizing. Her pants aren't that baggy in the show. And now to address the elephant in the room, the apron. Andi apparently does have an apron in the teaser, but in the pilot it's noticeably absent from her design. So until I see it back in episode 2, I'm just going to assume it's either A, completely gone from her design, or B, not part of her normal attire. Which I think is a mistake if either is the case. I love the apron. I'm bringing it back. I'm gonna bring it back. But instead of it just being a normal white apron, I did eventually want to add a unique design to it, which is what I eventually ended up doing. For Andi's jacket though, I wanted to make it more symmetrical. Trust me, I really do like the whole Cyberpunk 2077 inspired style of Andi's jacket in the original, but I wanted to turn her jacket into something a bit more World War II-esque, or World War I-esque? I'm not really sure. I wanted to make it more uniform, essentially, like a piece of fashion specifically associated with her profession. I also wanted to make her hoodie way bigger. Kind of like almost folding in on itself a little, so that when she wears it, it's like this huge brimmed spooky thing. Like extremely so. I'm not really sure how to describe it other than to show you the snake. Look at him, he's such a good boy. Going on to the coloring phases though, I tried to change Andi's skin tone and hair to a palette I had in my head, only for me to realize that that vision was a little bit more blurry than I remembered. So instead, I settled for using Andi's normal skin tone while still changing her hair color just a little bit. I don't know why, I just think it looks nice. I also decided to make the more bluish whites in her color palette take on a more yellowish tone, just because I think it fits a lot more with the overall green that encompasses her look. I also did the same for the apron, which, speaking of the apron, le piece de résistance, I had my struggle with the apron. I tried to make all these fun little designs that would reference back to Park Planet culture or history, only to find out that none of them really functioned all that well. Needless to say, I ended up settling for a more basic design. But I feel like this basic design actually worked out a lot for me here. The 07 is not a James Bond reference, but a reference to the lab that Andi works in. I'd like to think that these are standard one-and-done aprons that get handed out based on the lab you work in. And now I'm kind of vibing with the idea of each lab having its own unique yet simple design. But you're not gonna see much of that in this video, unfortunately. I gave her that weird star symbol thing that seems almost synonymous with Guinevere as an icon in the main show. Hell, it's even on her hair. Honestly, it almost feels like some sort of cultural symbol of the Park Planet Corporation itself. And now that I mention it, yeah, this thing is everywhere. To the point where it doesn't just feel like random decoration or random design quirk. It kind of reminds me of the Star of Bethlehem, or some sort of odd sci-fi space crucifix. Which probably isn't the intention, but it would fit with Guinevere being the unwilling corporate idol of this world. Anyways, I think it would be weird if the labs where androids are made didn't have some sort of allusion to the OG android, right? Maybe if I go through with the unique design for each lab thing, I'll have each design be some sort of reference to Guinevere, even if it's just a subtle one. This design in particular also serves as a little reference to the architectural design of the labs themselves. The star symbol makes up the structural foundation of the labs and then stretches down into one big elevator that goes into the sea, which I think is really cool. God, I just love Knights of Guinevere's world. Furthermore, I added a little splotch of robo juice. Oh my god, never let me say that again. To her apron to balance out the design. Kinda like Lute's angel blood splatter thingy, it can be a stain that Andy was just never able to get out. As for her jacket though, I'm only really tweaking the colors a little bit, making the jacket end accents that light green color as opposed to black like it is in the show, just so that it doesn't blend in with her boots. And, well, yeah, that's about it for that redesign. And now a sweet little bonus for everyone that's made it this far into the video, getting to watch me draw the thumbnail, and listening to me reflect a little. Like I mentioned before, I was still trying to keep close to the original, and as a byproduct, keeping the overall look of the original design, as well as the sleekness and more blue slanted color palette of Knights of Guinevere. I went into this with the mindset of simply tweaking a design I pretty much already loved, hence the title. But now that I've actually gotten those tweaks on paper and had to have time to reflect via writing the script, it's actually starting to make me think of all sorts of cool stuff. I mean, hell, I even trapped myself into conceptualizing a theoretical AU, like a rat with a fucking piece of cheese. But maybe that's a blessing in disguise. Because with this post-hoc shift in design mindset, I can be a lot more free with what I do design-wise from now on. So here's what I think. I am definitely coming back to this. In fact, I think I'm going to make this a series. This could be part 1, a glimpse at the humble beginnings of what I have planned for our little junior engineer here. It can be a process, and I think I'm comfortable with that. I think for the next part, I might actually lean even more into the more industrial aspects of dystopia like I said before. A lot of my aesthetic influences when it comes to imagining dystopian design comes from video games. Just to name one, I'm kinda a huge Fallout fangirl, especially for Fallout 2, which is the best Fallout game. Yes, even better than New Vegas. I will die on that hill. I will fight you over this. The classic Fallout games have a lot of grimy diesel punk-esque visuals mixed in with more atom punk visuals, and I absolutely adore it. I drool over it. So yeah, if you want to see what I do with all that, go ahead and like and subscribe. Smooth one, Augustine. I love Andy. It's kind of insane how much she's grown over me over the past months. She's a really funny and expressive character, and her grumpy cat attitude really plays into that. But I also appreciate the character depth that comes with all of that. She's a caretaker character, but one that doesn't necessarily fit with the personality tropes associated with caretaker characters. It's very heavily implied in the pilot that Andy protects Frankie, both on a physical and psychological level. She essentially takes on the brunt of the world for her. She's the most responsible one in the household and is shown to be more than willing to shove her own feelings down if Frankie is also upset, no matter how rough of a time she herself is having. And when it comes to Frankie's naive dreams, she seemingly wants to protect that positive naivety, even if it's to the detriment of herself. She sees herself in Frankie. She sees that lost innocence and wants to shield it with her own rough exterior, even if she's just delaying the inevitable. But people have their limits, and it's very clear Andy is reaching one. She's used to being people's rock. She's used to being that reliable person in people's lives. But that pressure has clearly taken a toll on her psyche over the years. I know that sounds like I'm reading too much into it, but official concept art basically confirms my reading of the text here, so yeah. All of this is to say, I can't wait to see where Knights of Guinevere goes with her and her baggage, and I can't wait to see where I go with her. Anyways, if you want to support the making of more videos like this, you can go on over to my Ko-Fi and make a donation, or a commission if you want something in return. Furthermore, you can see even more of my art on TikTok and Tumblr. Well, I've gotta run, but I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye!
You are out of uniform, soldier! Where is your power